Hey, it's Brent Scotchmer here. Now, this episode is a bit of a crossover episode. Last week, I was asked to be interviewed by Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Card podcast, and when he was talking to me about it, I asked him if he wouldn't mind if I recorded it for YouTube. It was a long interview, went for about 2 hours, so we're going to break it up into two parts, both him and I. The first part will go for about an hour. It's a bit of Q&A back and forth. The second part, there'll be a box break of Star Wars Chrome, Topps Chrome trading cards and a little bit more interview stuff. So I hope you like it and settle in for an hour.
All right.
All right, go for it. Yeah.
So the first thing I want to ask is you have a bunch of boxes you're going to open. Tell me the story of how you got the boxes to your desk.
Right. So because it's so expensive to get the boxes here, I try to keep it to a couple of times a year because the postage alone was close to $100 on these boxes. So for me to get 5 or 6 boxes from Dave and Adams to Perth, Western Australia, I mean, yeah, the postage alone is right up there. So I try to keep it to a couple of times a year, not to mention the fact that, those boxes probably cost me in Australian dollars, 600 odd dollars. So, I mean, you can imagine 600 plus your postage and everything. I mean, it's not something you want to do every week, but I'm a card guy. I'm a card guy from like when I was a kid, but the newer stuff, I guess, is a bit different. When I work on them, it's always like, I'm not inside on the base cards and stuff, but I'm inside on the card thing, and I go, we get a lot of photo references. I mean, basically my job is to look at photos of Star Wars, to look at all those references. I think I'm more now starting to get into the collecting side where I'm looking for parallels. I'm looking for, I'm getting more interested in it. The patches and the medallions, I don't know. I think the jury's out on whether they constitute a hit, compared to a sketch or an autograph. And you know what? And I think we were just saying before I started recording that, some people, especially maybe the sports community and stuff like that, and even the non-sports community, some of those people don't really, sketches aren't their thing. And that like maybe them pulling a sketch card is like, some people like art and some people don't like art. Some people are there for the autos. Just like everyone, when everyone buys a box of Star Wars cards, I guess they're all hoping they're going to pull the Hamill, Fisher, Ford auto, which is, wishful thinking, and there are less and less of those out there. But I think part of it for those people is the hobby as well. But yeah, as far as me getting the boxes here in Australia, it's hard work. It's sort of having to shop around, like I'm jumping from maybe Dave and Adams to Blowout to eBay to wherever and seeing where I can save that $3 or $4 or $5 on a box. And in this case, there was I had to sort of weigh up the options and go, well, like Blowout had a New Hope and Empire black and white boxes, but David Adams had Jedi and Empire, and I sort of and the difference was a few dollars, but I mean for me, it's all adding up, and I'll do it again. I think the more that I sort of start to get a bit more involved in talking to the community as well, and being a little bit more involved, that will sort of spawn more purchases, and hopefully, if I'm unlucky, it'll be a sickness and addiction like it is with everything that I do. Like, we get them here. The boxes behind me, like I said, if I can get them here for $20 a box, that's awesome. Sometimes that means I have to buy 10 boxes, 15 boxes. It still ends up being, a purchase that could be hundreds of dollars. But we haven't had these cards here for years. And even when we had them here, they were made by a different company. Topps didn't even really exist in Australia in the 80s, really. All the images were licensed out to other companies like Regina and Dynamic Marketing. Those were our Topps and Upper Deck back in the 80s and 90s. And the cards were all made locally. And I collect a lot of them. So behind me, Jurassic Park, which is just there. Those
Mhm.
boxes, that I got 8 boxes of those. They are Australian printed, Australian made Jurassic Park cards. The images are not the same as the top cards, the borders, the designs, the inserts, everything all different from the US release. I'm can't wait to sort of, start breaking one of those and showing off those, because they were just completely different. Um, yeah, the same with Batman. We had completely different Batman cards here. Some were the same. We had the exact same Topps release but they came in I think they came in a cello wrapper instead of a wax wrapper. But the designs were the same, but they were just made by a different company.
Well, it's interesting because, and I would say that, to some of the audience that I would have, and some of the collectors I talk to, that, you know, the further I get into this, the more interested you become, or the more you covet into getting, the cards that were released outside the US. And I just happened today, this is the OPC
Mm,
Star Wars from '77. And so these ones, were printed by OPG in Canada, and it made even better the fact that they combined a couple of sets together. And so these are numbered completely different. And then someone was very nice enough to send me some Journey to the Force Awakens
mm,
um, from the UK. And so these are completely different.
yeah, yeah,
And it's one of those where I think both collectors would, if you put them in a room with a pile, they would look at their own and like, "Pfft," and then they would look at what you have and they go, oh my gosh. And you would do
yeah,
the exact same thing. And, I think what's fun is to find it's not only is it a global hobby, but also that you find these things that are printed outside the US and you go, oh man, it's amazing. But I think it also makes it fun because there is that allure to it, that it's foreign, it's something else. And it also
yeah,
gives you something, especially going back to, like, say, an older set like a Star Wars or Journey to the Force Awakens, where you think you've covered all the ground, and you go, oh, it's something new, a new perspective, a new look to it. And once you kind of cross that threshold of being a collector, I think pretty much anything's on the table. The only what
yeah,
we don't have is is set up by these very, thin boundaries of, like, it was very easy for me to maybe sneak back into baseball. I used to collect baseball as a kid. And you start looking, you go to your local Target or whatever your big box store is, and they don't have what you have, but then you're going, boy, that kick looks interesting, and you're just like,
hmm
because there's just that thrill of opening packs, regardless of who makes them. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, there's opening packs is I get given crap all the time because I have all these boxes behind me, and people are like, why aren't all of those boxes open and there's wrappers and cards everywhere? It takes some self-control because it costs so much to get them here. I mean, admittedly, sometimes I'll go to a local toy fair and I might buy some extra blaster boxes or something, and I'll sell those. And if I can make $5 or $10 on a blaster, like, it helps pay for the ones that I keep, right? But yeah, I used to collect basketball cards when I was a kid. We had NBA in Western Australia. Don't ask me why. I don't know why NBA basketball was and still is like a massive card hobby. I have a local card store here, and his shop is not much bigger than the size of a couple of bedrooms, and with the current basketball lineup in the NBA, I mean, he is going to turn over $2.5 million in trading card sales today, and that is about 90% off the back of basketball cards, and that's in Perth, Western Australia, where you can drive from one end of the city to the other end of the city in an hour. That's it.
hmm.
That's the whole. There's 1.2, 1.3 million people here, and we have this massive basketball like card, I mean, I say massive, it's probably still only, maybe a couple of thousand people, but I mean, enough to generate millions of dollars in sales of basketball cards. It's
Wow.
so unusual. Yeah.
I'd be remiss, and I'm probably going to get uh, hate emails for this, but I want to say Luke Longley from the Bulls was
He
Australian.
lives not far from where I'm sitting right now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was going to say, because of his, you start thinking that mid '90s, and him being on there, and the Bulls being such, Michael Jordan and the Bulls being such a ambassador of the sport. the stars start to align a little bit. But yeah, how long would it take? Or like, if you're trying to get from one end, if you're trying to get from Perth to Sydney,
Mm-hmm.
what do you have to do, and what are the ways you'd have to do it? Is it by plane, or is it
Yeah.
even feasible to drive?
Oh, you can drive. It'd take about a week though. Yeah. So we on my side, on the west coast of Australia, there's some cities. And then on the east coast of Australia, there are most of the other capital cities. And in the middle, there's nothing. And then there's just one road. It's called the Nullarbor. And it's one dirt road which connects the west coast of Australia to the east coast of Australia.
Wow.
And there's only enough gas stations along the way for you
To get you there.
to get stuff, right? But that's how everything travels. So if I send a fairly large parcel from Perth to Sydney, that will go on a truck, and that truck, or it's called, you guys have them. I've spoken to people in America about it, but you guys have like hot shot. They're called hot shots. So there are guys who basically have a big semi-trailer truck, and all they do is drive from one end to the other end. In
Wow.
your case, it might be New York to LA. So like you might have truck drivers that all they do is they go to New York, they pick up, go to LA, they drop off, they pick up in LA and they go back and they drop off. And that's what we have here. Planes for sure. I mean, 4 or 5, I would say at least a half dozen flights every day from Perth to Sydney and back, right? So it's very common for us to travel, just like you guys travel. The flight from Perth to Sydney is about maybe 5 or 6 hours. So, and that's when I go to, the last couple of times I've been to the States, that was my flight path is. So usually the way you go to the States from here is I will go from Perth to Sydney, and then from Sydney to usually LA, which is about 13 hours or about 12 hours. The last time I went to Nashville, I didn't go to LA, I went to Dallas. So for me to get to Nashville, and I was only there for 3 days for this convention, is I went from Perth to Sydney, Sydney to Dallas, Dallas to Nashville. And I did all of those with only a few hours in between. So it was about 30 hours straight in a plane to get to Nashville. And I landed there on a Thursday afternoon, and I left on Sunday afternoon. And then did 30 hours all the way back. So yeah, getting from Australia to anywhere is difficult, but it's beautiful here. It's nice. It's quiet. We don't have really bad traffic. One of the funny things I have with interview people is they always think that all the most dangerous stuff is in Australia, but we're over here going, you've got bears, you've got, like stuff that would stampede you. Deers running out in front of cars, obviously not in the major cities and stuff necessarily, but, you hear the stories of, deers getting hit by cars and people going camping, and we only see the most sensationalized stuff of America over here. So, we think it's all guns and people getting mauled by bears over here. So,
I hear you. Living in the Pacific as I did during the 90s, you were very cut off. And I think you get in about as much, media or pop culture as you, in some cases, that you want to. Like if you keep the TV off, you could be completely oblivious to what's going on. And even when the internet was there, it's sort of like, well, if I want to tune out, oh, there's the sunset and there's a beach. And I've been on those plane rides where the way we had to go is we would fly to Japan, and in some cases overnight. And back then, Northwest Airlines, which is not around anymore, would overnight you in Narita, and then you could go from there to, let's say, Minneapolis or Chicago or Detroit, and then you go from there, and then you'd skip a day. So when I went over, I lost July 4th because of the international date line, and then I picked up the extra day on the way back. But it's one of those, when you get back, you're just sort of like, all right, you let me go for a couple of days until I get until I get it.
Yeah, actually, my first trip to the States back in 2010, I went to New York, and that was the way to get to New York, was to go from Perth to Narita, Japan, and then from Narita straight to New York. They don't do that flight anymore because they do now, but they stopped doing direct flights from Western Australia to Japan. But they've started doing that again. So if I was to ever go back to New York, that's probably the way I'd do, because Tokyo is great as well. Tokyo is such a great place. It's just people there are friendly, the weather's nice, everything's kind of beautiful, and the food's great and everything. And I would love to do that, Perth to Tokyo, spend a couple of days in Tokyo, and then go to New York. And the
That's
next
the way
time
you'd have to do it.
the next time I go to New York will be, hopefully to see the Tops offices and some of the guys that I know through the years from the olden days of Tops as well. A lot of the guys who were the publishers for things like, Wacky Packages and Garbage Pail Kids and stuff. Like a lot of those guys were working in New York when they were working on those sets, and they still live in New York. Guys like Jeff Zapata and Mark Newgarden and the guys that were responsible for those franchises.
How did you get your introduction to Tops?
So it started. I've always done artwork as a kid, always done a lot of sketching and stuff, and then I stopped. I'd learned guitar. I was a musician, amateur musician, right? And then started a family, and then that caused me to just have to go to work and just do my work, which is the business, my main business. And then we went on a holiday to the Gold Coast on the other side of Australia, and I was part of this Star Wars group called the Imperial Commissary, and someone on there, a lady named Marsha Parkins, you'd probably know her from sketches and stuff. She was posting up sketch cards, and I've always been a trading card guy anyway. And I was like, wow, this is cool. This is actual artwork on trading cards, just the same as you would pull like an autograph from a box of basketball cards. Now they're doing sketches. This is amazing. It's only 2016, so I guess sketch cards have been around for a while, but I'm not in the hobby.
Right.
I'm kind of new to Star Wars. I'm definitely new to picking up any pens or pencils again. And so I call a friend who has a print press and I say, hey, can you print me up some cards, some blank cards on just blank white stock, and I'll take them with me on holiday. So we're just going to be sitting around and relaxing on holiday. So I take a pencil case and I take a little stack of these cards and I start drawing characters on them, Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Star Wars and stuff. And so I get on the Star Wars group and I say, hey, look, I've got a couple of hours to kill. I'll draw some Star Wars characters for anyone who wants. And you can have them for free. I'll just send them to you. So obviously, like anything for free, people go crazy. So, and so I start that. And then that's when I get a message from Marsha and saying, hey, like, I see you're doing this for people. Why don't you as British and Australians would say, have a crack at Tops. And so she sent me the email for the art director. I sent some submissions through the way that you have to send submissions through. And that was it. My first set was Journey to the Last Jedi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So what was it? Yes, it was Journey, or was it Journey to the Force Awakens? I'm not sure, but it's one of those Journey to sets. And I did 30 sketches, and it was nerve-wracking, and I hated everything that I put out at the time because I wasn't used to sort of working on such time constraints and small format and trying to get likenesses. I mean, drawing Slimer from Ghostbusters is, there's not much you have to get right, but drawing Harrison Ford, there's a lot you got to get right to sort of make it look like him. And you can see through my work that, my earlier stuff was less accurate. My more recent stuff is a lot more accurate, and I've gotten better at working faster and using tips and tricks to, get fast likeness with, fast colors and things like that. And I'm still working on my style.
In just going before when we talked about the way of getting product to you, I'm surprised and I'm really happy that Tops, because they have to send you send you some of the stuff. It was really cool of them to kind of get on board with that, sending it so far, because that is an additional cost for them.
Everything I get comes in a FedEx International Express large box. I don't know what it would cost, but I can only imagine that return express trip from US to Australia back, I mean, it must cost them somewhere between $50 and $80 just to send me the cards and get them back. Not to mention we get paid for doing them as well. So yeah, I've always been sort of thankful that they're even willing to entertain it, because you don't want to think, especially with the world being so small. I mean, you and I now are safely socially distanced by 11,000 miles. But it would be very easy for a company well, for any sketch card company, and I have to give it up to all of the companies that have hired me for any job, is that no one has ever said to me, look, I would love to have you on the project, but it's just too damn expensive to send these cards back and forth. Everyone's, there's creative ways to do it. Media mail and packing things flat, and Tops are a huge company, and I'm sure they've got a really great deal with FedEx, which it probably makes it worth it. But I've been lucky. I've been really lucky that no one has ever said no to me, and that's part of I have to put out good product as well. Like if I'm not
Right.
putting out sketches that people like, then maybe one day someone will turn around and go, well, I'm not going to pay $25-$30 to send an envelope of blank sketch cards to a guy, and the work's kind of so.
So.
Mm,
Does it put a little, I'm sure it adds even a little more pressure to you, because then it's like if you, for whatever reason, had to take a pass on it or say, hey, look, I'm really busy, I think that kind of goes into, it's one thing if you're in Pennsylvania, go, now I'll pick up the next one. In your
mm.
case, it's like, do you feel a little added pressure because of that if you get the invite?
Yeah, I think I've only passed on a couple of sets. I've only ever passed on the Women of Star Wars. And even then, I don't even know if I got the invitation. I might not have even got the invitation, but I've only not done Women of Star Wars and the Rise of Skywalker Series 1. Besides that, I've worked on every single Tops Star Wars set since 2017.
Mm.
I have said no in the past and explained why. My wife's pregnant, or whatever the actual situation was, or last year I was in Canada for Christmas, so there's no way I could do a trading card set for them when I was flying all over the place, and I just didn't have the time. Often the deadlines are 3 to 4 weeks, and I was in Canada for 2.5 weeks, so it just wasn't going to work. But I explained the situation to them and say, I'm really sorry, I would have loved to have worked on it, and please don't, please make sure you don't take me off the list of people getting invites. I have no idea whether they would or would not take me off the list for, saying no. Plenty of guys work for Tops who take 3 or 4 or 5 sets off. They still get the invites. I think, their email list for sketch artists is probably 300 or 400 people.
Mm.
And they have about 100 to 150 artists on each set, depending on who's available.
Right.
So there's plenty in the pool, which is why you don't want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to say no too many times, because they're like, well, it's not worth sending the email if the guy's not going to take the jobs.
Now, you had talked about doing, starting those Star Wars cards, 2016, 2017.
Mm.
Now, this likely introduced you to a new set of fans or folks. You're definitely getting on now some other radar that you may have not been on before. So, I've done some work, but now I've got this newer audience. What was it kind of like once you kind of got in and people started seeing some of those cards? Were you getting extra commissions? Were you getting some looks, as it were? Were people starting to take notice, and what happened, and what was your reaction?
Sure. So I treated it like a business. I treat it like a business, like I run every day. I would do the job. You get the thumbs up and you get the likes, and then you see you see people selling them on eBay, and I don't take the eBay thing as a down thing. A lot of people are going like, oh, why wouldn't they want to keep that in their collection? Why are they selling it on eBay? But you know what? A really good judge of your work is to see what people think your work is worth when they sell
Mm-hmm.
those things on eBay. And so at the very beginning, those first sets I did for The Walking Dead and Star Wars and all those things, my sketch cards would go for, you'd see my sketch cards go for like $20-$30 or something. And then as the work gets, and I look at that and I go, all right, cool. Well, I can see, then you look at the other guys, you look at Chris Penix, and you look at like Carlos, and you look at Louise Draper and Marsha and all those guys, like, and you go, all right, cool. I can see, why that person's card is getting $200 and my cards are getting $40. And, not that I'm necessarily a slave to, the fans or whatever, but it's more that I go, well, look, really good likeness and really smooth color transitions and really, nice zoomed in things of characters everyone loves. That's where the value is, right? So you have to appease them a little bit. But yeah, I started getting sort of a few notices. Garbage Pail Kids was the one where the fans were really super crazy. Star Wars now, I've never had more Star Wars commissions than now.
Wow.
The stuff that I've been doing in the last 12 to 18 months is really like now I have to tell people that, you know, it'll be a month before I can start the card, or it'll be 2 or 3 weeks before I can start the card, because yeah, they're backed up. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not. I guess I'm a little bit too inside for it, really, to see what people think. People say nice things. You know, they pull something, they tag me in it, and say, "Look what I pulled. Look what I found. Look what I bought." Um, but yeah,
How did that then, this increase in this aspect of the business, impact the rest of the business? Or are you able to kind of never mind. I'm not going to say that word. Are you able to put it in its
compartmentalize.
place? Thank you, for heaven's sakes. More coffee.
Yeah.
More coffee. Yeah.
You mean the businesses that are not trading cards? Is that?
Yeah. So you're saying you're getting more commissions.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Than
that's
ever
what
before. How do you find, you know, like the trading cards is the trading cards. Like it's pretty much, you know, and without going into any kind of monetary thing, like it X and I get Y from it.
Mhm.
Now I'm getting this extra attention and this extra commission work that obviously, and you're saying it takes about a month. Does this impact the rest of your business, and how do you manage it?
Yeah. So I do a lot of things. My day every day starts at about 5:15, 5:15 a.m. That's when I wake up. I get to my office at about 6:30. Then I do artwork. So I'll do either be working on a set or on a commission till about 8 a.m. Then I go and I do my regular job, which is also painting. I paint. I do specialty coatings for glass panels for kitchens,
Mm.
kitchen backsplash, and I do that till about 3:30, and then I come back into my office and I continue to do art until about 5:30, and then that's it. So I get sort of a couple of hours every day to be able to work on things, and then on weekends and extra time if I need it and stuff. That's why I've been working on different techniques. So I've moved from doing coloring with markers, which is fast but not that fast, to paints, which look much better but is very slow, and now onto airbrush, which I find is both fast and good.
Hmm.
But it, you know, requires extra setup and machinery and things. So I manage it just with the hours in the day. I mean, I've got 3 kids. I've got, you know, my house, which we're constantly working on. I've got investment properties which constantly need, you know, working on. And like I said to you before, I play when the bars and clubs are open. I'm playing I'm playing music for money as well. So that's a Saturday night for 2 or 3 hours. So, I mean, my week is huge already. A, a commission card would probably take me 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours to do. So yeah, my ability, even if I don't have any trading card sets to do, my max ability is really only about 1 card a day. Yeah, so it's slow, but I mean, that's where I'm getting to at the moment. So right now, with the notice that I'm getting from the work and the other little projects that I'm doing artistically, that's slowly starting to replace my day job. It's actually starting to slowly,
Really?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Like not monetarily necessarily, but if my business fell over tomorrow and I had to become a full-time artist and musician to pay my bills, I could almost do it, which I have never been able to say up until maybe 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So it's good. There is a career in it. It depends on your cost of living. It depends on how you like to live. You know, like if you want to become a full-time artist, and there are plenty of them out there, everyone adjusts their cost of living to suit their lifestyle, right? If you want to become a full-time artist and you don't want to go and work a second job at night, or you don't want to work a regular job and do your artwork outside of those business hours, well then you just, you know, you make that decision, don't you? Either don't do the art and work your 40 hours and pay your bills, or do the art and figure out a way to pay the bills. Like, yeah.
No, it's no different than, if you're presented with an artistic challenge, it is trying to find, it's trying to find a way to fit Star Wars in a 2.5 by 3.5.
Mm,
You have that constraint of it. And I don't think that you would get to even getting to that idea unless there is a lot of discipline, and not only in getting up and going, this is the amount of time I have. I can kind of speak of this a little bit from doing two jobs for the past 10 plus years, where you have to become real cognizant of the time I have, and here's what I have to do, and I have to find the most efficient way to do this. But what can suffer if you're not careful is the work-life balance of the family.
hmm
Easier
Yeah.
when the kids are smaller, very much harder when the kids get older, because each age, each year adds a different set of challenges. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you had to think two or three
Well,
times ahead.
well, now it's a different situation altogether because I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So I would say less easy now with a 7-month-old because there's the guilt factor. I'm already away from home 13 hours a day working, and then I come home, and the last thing my wife needs to see is me sitting at the dining table doing sketches when there's a baby who needs a bottle and needs, this and that. And I like spending time, I mean, my older two kids, they're more grown up now. They're more independent. It's almost like living in the house with roommates
Yep.
because they're past that stage. There's no kind of like, dad, take me here and dad, take me there. Well, there is, but it's like, dad, take me to my boyfriend's house. Dad, take me to the shops because I need something. It's not sort of like, take me to the park and play with me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the little one, she just is a little time suck. She just, you can, I guess if you've had kids, that sometimes you can stare at them and then you realize that you've lost an hour and you go, oh my, like I've just lost
Mm-hmm.
an hour just staring at them, figuring out what the world is, which is the best part of it. I love it so much. And
It's awesome.
yeah, it is good in that. But I would say it's easier with my older two because they're so independent. They know what I do. Um, I don't think they necessarily care. I don't think they necessarily care what I do. But the little one, she needs my attention. I think that will get harder as she gets older as well. Because like, Daddy, do this. Come here and do that.
Oh yeah, I have an 18-year-old, just graduated high school, and yeah, it's one of those like, yeah, I'll see you around later. Then mainly it's you trying to go, when you coming home, and then
Yeah,
I have an 11-year-old who is still, I think when you're talking about that 10 to 12, where um, it's a fun age, and she's got a bit of artistic bug in her, and she's far more advanced than I was at that age in drawing, and it's fun to watch that go. And then you're just trying to, sometimes you even have to say, you want to segment out some of their time, like, all right, do your homework, like, all right, I want you to draw. And
yeah,
sometimes they'll do it, and they kind of look at you like, why are you making me draw? I'm like, you don't understand. You don't get better. You'll be very surprised. And then there's the tools now, there's Procreate and things like that on the
yeah,
iPad.
yep,
And I think I just got her into Procreate, and she was using something else, and it's like, oh, okay. And I think
mm,
by the time, if she decides she wants to do it, then you know then it's less about, oh, this is how I do this. Then it's more just
mm,
about, I just need to knock this out, and I get the concept of layering and colors and shading and all that. And
yeah.
it's
I'm
amazing where.
I've only just picked up Procreate now. I've just recently got an iPad Pro, and because sometimes I feel like I create a piece, but I'm not very good with lettering and border. Sometimes a piece would look nice if it had a border and it had lettering, and you could make it into prints. And so, like, asked around a couple of really knowledgeable people. Another tops artist, Matthew Hirons, he sort of guided me towards the iPad and Procreate, and it's like starting from ground zero. Like, it's just like, oh, I got, here's a guy, he's got, you know commissions coming out the wazoo. He's got like a month waiting list on trading cards, and I pick up an iPad. I'm like, oh, I suck, like, like, how do I do this? And then layers, and then like cropping and clipping and doing stuff, and I'm like, oh man, this is like a whole new. And that's the hard thing now is that I don't really have the time to learn how to use Procreate, which is essentially like a Photoshop,
Mhm.
from scratch, as a 37-year-old with a mortgage and 3 kids and like 3 or 4 businesses. It just, But I got to do it. Like, that's where everything's going at the moment. You know, it's one thing to be able to do a really great portrait, but how are you going to turn that portrait into something that people would want to hang on their walls? You know, sometimes it needs a border, it needs some sort of framing. If you're doing professional work, sometimes it will need, you know, you need to be able to submit something, and if they suggest a change, that you know, you need to be able to make that change. And if they're willing to accept that change done digitally, then that saves a lot of time, right? You know, or, you know, can you take this character and make them a little bit bigger? Can you move this element? Can you move this X-wing from the top right-hand side to the left-hand side, flipping and cropping and airbrushing and doing, you know, doing things like to do that physically would be mountains of work, you know, mountains of work. I mean, Drew Struzan, he's the guy who did all the Star Wars posters. We did basically all of the cool movie posters ever. He, you know, like he says it like that everything he did was physical back then in the 70s and 80s. And so when he would have like sometimes 15, 20 different compositions before he would even start to do the final artwork, because once they, you know, once you start, there's no going back. And people who are not artistic or people who are not in that world don't understand what might be involved to change an element like that. They don't understand that maybe, you know, you put the TIE fighter on the right-hand side of the poster and they want it on the left-hand side. You don't just cut it out. It's painted onto a board. You know, you've probably spent 2-3 hours getting that thing looking correct. And now it's start again. So digital is, as much as I love traditional, I don't think it'll ever stop traditional. I prefer it. Digital is going to be here to stay. It has its fans, and definitely the next generation, like your daughter and my kids and stuff, I don't think they see the difference between traditional and digital. I think they see, if it's cool, it's cool. Like if it looks really awesome, then it looks really awesome. And that getting them to appreciate the handmade quality of something that's painted, you almost have to, I don't know, it might be a process of like getting them to sort of understand it and what work went into it. And, you know, the same amount, potentially the same amount of work goes into a really, really nice digital piece, as in time wise. You could invest the same amount of time into a digital piece as you would a physical piece, but there's not this sort of the work, you know, the cleaning the brushes and the mixing the 2 or 3 colors to make this shade of skin tone. You know, Procreate, you put your pen on the skin tone that you want and you touch the screen and boom, there's the color. It's ready to go.
And you'll see that in, say, like, let's say a work done by Ingrid Hardy, right?
Yeah.
Or Chris, that, you know, they're painting and so forth. And so you see that, definitely that aesthetic there. And I remember, you know, the first time in one of the first conversations I had with, you know, Dawn Murphy, where she had drawings that she'd done digitally and versus one she's done, you know, in traditional methods. And, you know, I think I think an artist would say, whatever gets me to there. You know, if I can understand the tools and I can spend more time enjoying it, then in some cases, you know, the process be damned. I just let my artistic side go, and I'm just going to create this, and it's awesome. And the more I know it, the more, you know, fun I have with it, the better it's going to get, because I'm going to spend more time doing this rather than, you know, sometimes maybe I have to go back through. And I was thinking the first time I'd seen, you know, like a program my daughter was working on, and you start to see, like, you know, your traditional, like, I'm going to do that blue sketch, then I'm going to do another layer, and I'm going to go back over and ink, and it's going to be amazingly smooth. I don't have to basically, you know, erase it off. And that really sort of, like, your head just turns around going, man, I want to do that. Because, you know, you have your sketches and what you think, and you go, what I love most about, you know, if you're going through comic books and stuff, is just how clean the lines are and all that. But I also think if you're picking it up where, you know, you have an audience, and if you're picking up commission work, they like seeing this, but there might be a segment of the audience that would be open, or just like that look to it. I'm like, hey, if I can give you the same enjoyment, you know, get a couple of bucks off it, but you can, like, you didn't like this, but you like this, then I think it makes you more versatile. Go, like, I can give you, like, here's, you can have Luke Skywalker this way, this way, this way, or this way. Pick one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, Ingrid is a really good example of that. I mean, it's a perfect example of like the major artistic ability is in the simplicity of her work. I mean, it's so just right. Like, it's just so just perfect. But at the same time, it looks like there's just most of the time, there's not huge amounts of detail, but it's just perfect. And this sort of, when I talk about this stuff, it always brings me back. The band Metallica had this documentary called Some Kind of Monster, and it sort of followed them around and on their, personal troubles and stuff. And the drummer collects a lot of art, and he would collect this really contemporary art, and there's splashes of stuff, and it just looks like someone threw paint cans everywhere. And he said the thing about it is, how did that person know when it was enough of that? Because Ingrid could say she has like a painting of an 8080 and add in the snow, and it's so simplistic, and it's probably not, it's not something that I could ever do, but I mean, it's simplistic in that it doesn't have a million tiny dot details to make it photoreal, yet it's perfectly real. The colors are spot on. The brush strokes and the shapes are what makes up the look of it. And it's just perfect, but it's a different kind. It's a different kind of perfect. It's that same thing. Like, how did she know that when she was sort of brushing the oil paints here and there and sort of swirling them around, doing whatever, how did she know that it was enough? When did she know that it was fine to stop right there? But for me, I'd be like, that's a half finished card. For me, it's absolutely perfect. Like, for me as someone who appreciates art, but my stupid OCD brain would never, because my style, like, I'm not trained like that. So my style is different. I couldn't do the same thing she did and then feel the same way about it as I am someone looking at her work. Does that make sense?
No, and it's one of those things, and I think that, it's interesting, and I think you've seen Topps kind of go into this where they're getting, there's a lot more photorealism than I think, in the years past, where you could have like Logan with pointillism, or you could have Jamie Cosley with more of a little more cartoony, where you have these different takes. And I think the thing about Ingrid, going back to it, is, the person looking at the card fills in those blanks. It's like, it's like you're listening to an audio drama where you're just like filling it in. And, it is something, I think it's one of those where you could look at it and, was it great artwork is never finished, it's just abandoned. But yeah, you could go, you could go into the detail, but having that confidence to go, no, that's enough, because, and being confident enough in this is my aesthetic, this is my style. What the Marvel Card Collectors podcast had in their 50th episode, they had, was it Boris Vallejo and June?
Wow. Julie Bell.
Julie Bell, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And they were going off, and those ones where they were talking about getting, like just enjoying the physical body of the subject and going through that. Yeah. And that was just them. And you have this folks that just love that are aesthetic, but it's something where now you're going from sketch cards to really art cards, we call them. I've been really trying to say that more and more now, where if you're trying to separate yourself, this is who I am, and the confidence to go, people will accept me, this is what makes Brent, this is what makes Carlos, this is what makes Chris.
Yeah. And you only need to open a box of, you only need to pull a sketch card out of a box from 2011, 12, 13 to realize how far we've come. I mean, like I said, I only buy boxes a couple of times a year, and there was a point where I bought like a box of the original Galactic Files, and I bought a box of what's the Jedi versus something. It was an older one.
Oh, there was.
It had film cells with the inserts in it. But they were sort of like 2012, 2013. And I put some sketch cards, and I mean, like, one, I didn't recognize the names of any of the artists. Those artists are not currently working on sketch cards, which is, whatever. But I mean, they were really simplistic. I mean, for the small money that they get paid, they were they were doing that value. You know, if Topps were going to give them a couple of bucks to do a sketch card, they did a sketch card worth a couple of bucks, you know. Whereas now I think that with the internet being the way it is now and everyone being able to share everything backwards and forwards, there is that natural competition. I'll say healthy competition. It's healthy competition to be able to go, you know, my style is not the same. My style is not the same as, say, Dave Gaskin's style. I love his style. And I look at it and it inspires me to do something with mine as well. Although I don't want it to look the same as his, and it won't ever be the same as his. But there is that healthy competition, right? Dave, right. Those guys, Carlos and Chris and all those people, they get so much praise because their likeness is spot on, their coloring is spot on, everything is just on the nail. And so there's that should, as an artist, that should make you want to, if you haven't found your style yet, if you haven't sort of figured out like where your lane is, then that should be the way it works. You should look at other people's work and go, I'm going to steal a little bit of this and I'm going to steal a little bit of that. I'm going to steal the way that, you know, Dave does his underpainting on his skin tones, which you can't see. You cannot see in the finished product, but he does it, you know, or whatever it is. But like, or if I'm going to steal the way that, you know, like Logan does, you know, this type of dot shading, or I'm going to steal this or that or whatever. Like you know, I forget the saying, but it's like, you know, great artists steal. You know, they take the best. That's how you develop your style, is you take the influences from the best people that you know, and then you put it all into your work, and you come out with your style. Just the same as a musician, you know, the guys who you think of someone like Black Sabbath, you know, like no one really did their kind of music before they did. And if you were to ask those band members about their influences, you would be very surprised to find that it's nothing that you would listen to as a Black Sabbath fan, right? You know, like those guys might have a history of liking pop music, country music, classical music, and all of that went into the creation of heavy metal. And so you've got heavy metal fans that love, their inspirations are Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and all those sort of bands, but the inspirations of those bands going back could be something completely different, and you might not be able to even tell in their style that that's what it is. But if you ask them, you'll be able to find out what it is.
I couldn't have said that better. Other than Henry Rollins said it once famously.
He's a great
Who
guy.
do you trust? The first 6 Black Sabbath albums and me. And I still believe that. It's like those. You get the first 6 and like that. That's it. There's nothing else. But
man,
yeah,
you want to talk about a guy who can talk for a long time. Henry Rollins can talk for a long time. Hey, I saw him like a one-man show sort of thing, just spoken word show. Man, it was like 5 hours or something. It was like 4 hours. I think they were like flashing the lights on and off to like the theater was like, wrap it up. And he just kept going. And I mean, he wasn't even doing Q&A. He was just talking. It was amazing. Absolutely. Him and Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith can
go.
talk.
It's interesting though, as this crew, as this group of artists, and you know, you guys have your, you know, there's that, as Sammy Gomez was saying, it's like, it's not a competition. Like you're saying, it's not a competition, just a group, and everybody's kind of cheering on each other, and it's pushing it. And so what I think card collectors are really almost kind of taken for granted at this point is like, we have got this stable of, you know, the art has really risen year, you know, set by set, year by year. And you're just going, you know, we're really, it's one of those things where you just go, all right, do you see what we're getting? And it's clear. I think it's eclipsing, to me. The autographs are great. That's as when you come back into this hobby, you know, you first go with the autographs, and then you start realizing that the sketch cards, the art cards are the true gems in this, and they keep getting better and better and better. One thing I have to ask you though is, when you're coming up on a set, and I know you've probably got some sets coming up, maybe some things that you're working on, you know, when you're returning to a character, you know, how do you approach going back to a character a successive time? I'm assuming you've had to do, you know, XYZ character numerous times. Now, how do you try to challenge yourself to go, all right, I got to do another Luke. I've got to do another. I know there'd be one listener who'd be like really interested in a Luke, but I'm just saying, how do you approach it to go, all right, I got to do the same guy, or I got to do the same gal same creature. You know, it's like, what do they say? Give me the same but different.
Yeah, sure.
How do you
So
approach that?
I just realized that I'm recording us in video here, and I just realized that I was probably making faces a second ago, thinking of the faces that I remember I like from the Star Wars characters. So yeah, there are go-to ones. I like anything that seems off the cuff. Like if you catch, I love like reactive expressions. So like if my favorite one, I think this is where I was making the face, but someone says something to Han in Empire Strikes Back, and he goes, like he has this sort of, he just looks back, and he just looks back like, what? Like, I forget the actual word, but it was kind of like someone talking back to him something that he didn't want to say, and he has this face. Like, I like that stuff. And so what I will often do, and this is a efficiency thing as well, as what I'll do is I'll find that section of the film, and I will cap 3 or 4 shots in a row of, you could almost storyboard them side by side of that face. And so so right now there's no Star Wars invite as of right today, the 19th of June 2020. There are at 8:37 a.m. my time. There are no invites at the moment. There are no Star Wars card sets that I'm working on. There is one that's actively going on at the moment, which is Holocron.
Mhm.
I've just happened to be finished before the deadline on that. But that one is definitely one. There's one that I have there's probably 7 sketch cards I've done, and all 7 of those sketch cards are from about 15 seconds of footage in the cantina in A New Hope.
Oh,
It's
wow.
it's Ben and Luke talking to Han in the cantina, them trying to convince him that he should take them where they need to go. And so in that section, Han is both laughing at them for being ridiculous, he's angry at them, he's confused, and he's just inquisitive. And I've got all 4 of those in sketches. And you put them side by side, and they're all they're all completely different expressions, but they're all within the same 10 seconds of footage. And then there's a couple of Lukes. There's Ben explaining something to Han, and then there's Luke looking at Han, wondering what the hell's going on. I've just been pulled out of my house. I'm just a farm kid. So I like that. I don't really necessarily like the sort of dead on face, sort of plain expression and stuff. I like things to be kind of reactive or thinking, something where you can look at the card and you can replay it in your head instantly. It's something that's kind of obscure, but it's burnt into your memory. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? You could see the card, like Holocron has no particular sort of theme, this card set, right? But you should be able to pick up any of my sketch cards from this set and instantly, and remember, you're encompassing 9 films. You're talking about 9 or 18, 20, like you're talking about 20 to 25 hours of film. You should be able to pick up any one of my sketch cards and within 2 seconds be able to put yourself back in the position in your mind of playing out that 5 seconds of like, oh, this is the bit where Han said, you guys are crazy. Like that's what I like. I like that sort of.
And and I think it goes back to, we can watch this film, we can go back, a lot of times, we've seen these films over and over again, but a lot of times we go back and we pick up certain things, or certain other scenes will speak to us as we get older. I
Mm-hmm.
can go back now and watch that. And I think it's got to be fun also, as you're going through this exercise, you're now maybe paying attention to a scene that you've seen a million times, but then you kind of go back through. And I know in doing some, you know, I I've done some like digital portrait work where, you're spending 2 or 3 hours on somebody's face, and you start to really learn, like, I've seen this person, I've been around this person, but now you're really starting to get in there, and you're seeing a lot of the details around the eyes, around the mouth, or like how, how the eyebrows work, or how, like, the ears are, and
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, you're going not necessarily maybe from a dead on, but you're going from the side. It must just really, it brings something new out from something you've seen over and over again. And now you're almost like tag your it to the person that gets the card, because now they're going to kind of go back and go, yeah, I haven't seen that. Yeah, I've seen that scene, but I haven't really looked at it this way. That to me is got to be such a thrill.
Yeah, I've started adding things in that I never used to. So like I never used to do the scar under Han Solo's bottom lip. But now I do, because I know that that's part of what makes it kind of accurate, is to go, oh, they remembered that detail. But then you need to find the balance between not adding too many wrinkles. You know, now that we have, like, you can go to StarWarsScreenCaps.com and you can get 4K transfers of every single second of footage from any movie. And so you need to learn to be respectful of, like, just because someone has a lot of crow's feet, you know, like, you didn't notice the crow's feet around Leia's eyes when you were watching the film. But when you pull out that one frame and it's 4K transfer, you know, it's a really high res image, like, you're seeing details there that obviously she's human. That's sort of, you know, part of being a human, but you pick and choose what you will and won't include, you know, to be respectful of the person. Luke Skywalker is a good example, really, because his face changed so much from A New Hope to Empire. I think I keep hearing recently that he had like a major car crash or something between. So his face sort of changed a bit, and then in Jedi as well, his face is completely different again. So like, that's really unusual. Drawing A New Hope Luke next to drawing a Return of the Jedi Luke is so different. They're just well, to me, it just seems like completely different people almost. The shape of his nose, like A New Hope Luke, his nose, the bridge of his nose is very straight and flat. You know, there are a couple of shots, like really side on shots of Luke. Whereas I don't think I saw anything like that in Jedi, like really like perfect side profile. It's just one of those unusual shots. So yeah, I think you get to know the people, don't you? I mean, I've managed to be able to meet some of, you know, the people who are in the films and stuff too, which is great. It puts a human aspect to it. Try not to like ruin the dream too much by meeting too many people, but you know, like, it's nice to sort of know how the films are made, but you don't want to take away from what they are, from what they were in the films, the characters and stuff.
Oh man. Yeah, and the what was your first con that you went to, or event you went to, where you are now an artist? And you know,
I've only been to two. I mean, my home life and work schedule is so nuts that I just don't really have much chance to do these things. But I've been to two. I've been to ICC Con in Nashville 2 years in a row. So last year and the year before, both as an artist. The first time I didn't have a table, I just walked around. I had hundreds and hundreds of trading cards printed out of some work that I did, and I just walked around and handed out free trading cards. That was great. Met a lot of people, and it made it so good the second time around. When I did go as an artist, I did all of the artwork for the entry passes and the badges and stuff. All of the celebs had to wear my artwork around their necks as their sort of VIP pass. It was awesome. It made it really good. Like, I guess it helps being Australian, especially when I'm probably only one of two Australians. You know, like, there was at ICC Con last year, there was maybe 3 Australians plus Daniel Logan, who's from New Zealand, and that was it. You know, like, so when you hear the voice and someone comes up and says, and people just walk up, they're just cruising and they see your table and they see, you know, artwork on the table. And then they go, you know, how are you? And I'm like, hi, I'm great, thanks. You know, like, you turn on the, oh, wow, like, you're Australian. Or they ask, where am I from? You know, if it's New Zealand or England or Australia. And then all of a sudden you're just instant friends, because they want to know. They want to know, like, what's going, you know, what, oh, wow, how, you know, do you live here? Did you travel? Oh, yeah, I got here yesterday and I'm leaving tomorrow. Oh my God, you know, like, they're great. I hope I can do a lot more. I had a submission in for the art gallery at Celebration this year, but Celebration's been cancelled. So I may still get accepted into the art gallery for Celebration, but it'll only be virtual, which kind of is sad, because I was hoping to be in Anaheim in August.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, like it's we don't know a lot other than I got an email saying that they decided to cancel and that my submission still counts and that they'll still be having an art gallery, but it'll be virtual at best. So that would have been great as well. Again, just because there are not many, Australians doing this sort of thing. Like I said, there's Michelle Rayner. She's based in Tasmania. She's another sketch card artist. And then you got, like I said, Mark Rutz, who is, he is a legit Star Wars artist. He's done posters for The Last Jedi and stuff like that. So there's not many of us doing it, and everyone seems to get along with Australians. We're pretty easygoing. We're pretty easygoing, and we like to make a joke, and that's the hard balance when you're overseas, especially going out for dinner with people. Is we will make a joke about anything, and then sometimes you get like Americans, and they'll look at you like they're not sure if you're really having. Are you serious? Like, no, I'm not serious. I'm just joking. I'm like, oh, okay. But then Americans can be really sarcastic. Like sarcasm is like a big one. Like Americans can be really sarcastic in their comments. And I'm like, oh, that almost sounds rude. And they're like, I'm just kidding. Like, and I'm like, oh. So it's a different kind of humor going back and forth, but it's great. Like going out to dinners with people and sort of working out those, what's the difference with this and what's the difference with that, and freaking them out with what our traffic fines are versus theirs, and what we pay for American cereal, because we don't have the same cereals that you do. We have Australian cereal, so we can get like a box of right now this is a good one. So right now, recently in the last 3 or 4 months, we just got Apple Jacks cereal, right? So it's a new thing. And the crazy thing is it's made in Australia under license. That's Kellogg's. And it's $6.50 a box.
Wow.
Right? Before we had Apple Jacks in Australia at $6.50 a box, if I wanted a box of Apple Jacks, I'd have to go to a candy store. I'd have to go to a specialist candy store. We have a few of them around. They sell nothing. They're like your ye olde lolly shop. And they're like a Willy Wonka type of thing, and to buy a box of American cereal imported, for me to buy a box of Apple Jacks 6 months ago would have cost me $13.
Ooh.
Yeah, because
I like Apple Jacks, but not that much.
Yeah, well, when I brought back, that was probably the best part my family enjoyed, besides me coming home, was like my suitcase filled with like, I'll tell you what, a box of Lucky Charms is a lot of real estate in a suitcase for one guy coming back from the States, but it provided a lot of value when we got back home, because there's the whole, this is nuts. There's marshmallows and cereal. This is the most ridiculous thing we have ever seen in our lives. And then you're eating it and you're like, this is candy. This isn't even cereal, and then like people eat this every day, so I don't know. We must be fairly boring. I think we have like peanut butter on toast for like breakfast, I just have coffee.
We just had more grain to make more cereal and more different kinds of, and it's something where you still can go through the cereal aisle and just go, it's just nuts. And you're going, really, anything from Cookie Crisp to what have you.
Going through Walmart when I was like, I would finish at these conventions and then I would just go walk through Walmart, go to a local one. And that's another funny thing is like, the Americans that I'm meeting, they're like, why would you you've just traveled like 13,000 miles. Why would you go to Walmart? Like go somewhere good, but like I would go through this Walmart in like Franklin, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And it's like gigantic. It's absolutely huge. And like, yeah, the cereal aisle is like an aisle. Like two sides, like two sides of an entire aisle of just cereal. And like where I live, it's like half of one side of an aisle, because we don't have that many variations. We got Special K, we call it Wheat Bix. They're like wheat bricks, mm-hmm. and kind of, corn flakes and rice bubbles and rice pops and stuff like that. Like, but yeah, your ones are like, it's got jelly in it, it's got marshmallows, it's got miniature the most ridiculous one is like the one that's got miniature chocolate chip cookies in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's like legit cookies in a bowl of cereal. I'm trying not to swear. I'm trying not to say like that
Nope.
is
Nope. That
effing crazy.
it's funny because my kids, they're not huge cereal. There are certain cereals they will eat from time to time, but it's not a mainstay like it was for my generation. I'm Generation X, and they're probably much better off. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like like I said, you see a Pop-Tart flowing every now and then, they'll eat, but it's certainly not the packaged processed stuff that
Yeah.
that we had. And Lord knows we don't need another donut chain in the United States. I'm like, it's one of those where it's like, you know it's good in some cases. A lot of people say like, oh, it's not as good as it used to be. And others where you go, no, this is just fine, that some of this needs to die out
Right.
before it I don't mind taking some of those sugary cereals with me to the grave, as far as like, what, if another generation doesn't necessarily have to bug their parents to buy them this thing that's basically is pure sugar. And, part of this nutritious breakfast where basically the rest of the breakfast is counteracting the
Mm.
sugar of this, just to kind of give you some balance. No wonder it's balanced. It has to balance out this bowl of pure cane sugar that you're basically eating.
That's what I've got to look forward to with a 7-month-old, is she's just now starting to eat little crackers and little, things, crisps and stuff. But soon it's going to be, oh, bright colors. I want this and I want that.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas my older kids, I mean, they're full-blown teenagers. If you want that, go buy it. You make money. You got pocket money and you earn money or whatever. If you want to have that for breakfast, you go buy it. But I'm not paying $7 for a box of sugar.
Exactly.
Like
And as much as they complain about it, as a parent of older kids, this, the first 4 or 5 years for them is a wash. Whatever you do or don't do, only their therapist later will actually figure out what would actually happen. So you'll be long gone and in the clear by the time they really figure out, oh my gosh, that's what he did. And then you're like, I'm done. I'm gone. But anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I've really taken a lot of your time enough. I think we should probably crack some packs. Otherwise, 3 hours from now, you're going to be like, I'm going to run down your whatever batteries that you have.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm going to just work on getting my little card cam here for you so you can see what I'm doing, and then we can talk about what's inside these, because I'll be totally honest with you. We're going to open some Topps Chrome Legacy 2019, which I worked on for sketch cards. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've even seen a single card from this set. So
It's a Chrome, like I said, it's interesting, and it's very hard to photograph when you're trying to put it on Instagram. But it is one of those where I like that there are different card sets that appeal to different types of collectors. Everything from the Journey to where you'd have a classic Starfield to, let's say, a Galactic Files, which is all character driven, or you have like Chrome, where it's like, here's a little higher end one. However, some will have better parallels than others. Some will be more expensive, aka like say Masterwork or something. But I think you have something, and we're very blessed in the Star Wars, field, that you have something that kind of appeals to everyone. Even with this Journey of the Child set, that was basically a Walmart or Target. I think it was like $10. You got the full set, 30 cards or so forth.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to get more, there was some parallels if you wanted to do that, but that was it. And so you have something for the casual collector, something more for the serious collector. I know that I was fortunate enough to get a few, and sometimes I think I have the luxury, like I said, of where I am. I can pick cards, and sometimes you'll go, maybe I'll grab a couple of packs, or I'll grab a smaller box. I want to see them. I want to look at them. I want to get the vibe for them, and then maybe I want to chase the whole set, or maybe I'll go back and chase, there is the ones that you chase right now and the one you chase later. And I think you are a great example of these are great cards, and I'll get them next year.
Yeah,
And,
I can wait.
patience
Yeah.
is a virtue, because you're going to enjoy them. You already know everything about them, but you're going to catch them at such a break. I mean, it offsets when you're doing the cost, but it is fun because when you get them and go, like I said, there's the instantaneous glory of opening them up, but you go, oh man. So yeah, Chrome Legacy is a fun set that one of these days I'll probably finish.
that's the end of the first hour. I will release this second part to that in a few days, and you can see the box that I opened. You can see what I got out of that box, and it's just the first of very many boxes that I'll be opening. You can see lots of packs behind me here, and look, thanks very much if you made it this far, if you managed to sit down through all of that, and look, I hope you'll come back and we'll do it again.